Welcome to Monday, August 23rd, 2021. Welcome to the Day Weather Podcast. Thanks for spending the time to join us today. Routine late August weather is the best way to describe what's coming across the Intermountain West. Pretty much close to normals. That means temperatures up and down. Yeah, we'll have some pretty warm days, then we'll cool off, then we'll warm up again, cool off a bit. But the constant string of heat that we see in midsummer is tempered a little bit because about every 2 or 3 days, we're going to have cold fronts come through brushing the area, with the best rain chances being for you folks up north, and we'll highlight that. We really have some good news to report. You know, a lot of times all we hear is bad news about the weather, but the last week has brought some really good rain to areas that really needed it, and we'll show you where it fell. La Niña update coming your way as we get to the end of the podcast. Today's satellite imagery, this is the water vapor image. We had a cluster of thunderstorms move through northwestern Wyoming overnight and early this morning. They'll head up into southern Montana earlier today. That'll bring more rain, needed rain to that area early. But we have a pretty good wedge of dry air coming in out of the desert states and off the west coast. So that's going to keep the central and southern Rockies fairly quiet. But notice we still have a fair amount of high humidity subtropical air here down in Mexico and West Texas and parts of southeast Colorado. But it's getting really taken over by this drier air mass here, at least for the start of the week. As we step forward, what I'm going to do here is going to show you several days of the 500 millibar pattern. This is a good map to show you where basically the jet stream is and where the highs and the lows are. Today, we've got a southwest flow with high pressure centered over eastern Texas, so the clockwise flow is bringing warm desert air in. But we also have another low and a frontal system that's going to get drugged through the northern Rockies and the northern Plains states tonight and into the day Tuesday. We've got another one here. We've got another one here. And as long as high pressure is anchored in the Gulf of Alaska, we'll be under a west to northwest flow. That's why you get fronts about every 2 or 3 days. So this is today. This is Thursday. Here's the next low coming on in and a frontal system. So at the end of the week, we'll cool off. And at the end of the week, we'll have scattered showers and thunderstorms. Another front there, another front there, and they're just lined up to come through about every 2 or 3 days. They're not going to produce a ton of weather, but they'll keep our temperatures at an even keel. This is by Saturday. Here's the next frontal system going on through. You're probably noticing they're going through this area the most, not penetrating very far south into southern Wyoming or Colorado. So when we talk about most of the weather, where there's going to be action, the biggest swing in temperatures, the best chance of rain, it's going to be up there closer to the U.S.-Canadian border. And this is 10 days from now. So this is Saturday, and this is by next Wednesday and Thursday. Notice the colors are a little more gray. We got a trough extending out of Western Canada coming on through. So this takes us into the first couple of days of September. So basically a more eastward shift of the hot summer heat is into the eastern areas of the United States, and we're basically just into about where we should be for the end of August. Over the next 10 days, this is where the precipitation is going to be falling. Notice all the red and the orange colors up here in southern Canada, parts of the northern Rockies and the northern Plains and northwest Corn Belt. Boy, they really need the rain here. They really need more rain here, and they're going to get it. And look at the southern provinces of Canada. Very wet. We still have subtropical moisture available. So there's still going to be showers and thunderstorms over the central and southern Rockies as well. Nothing like we had in July, but there's going to be a little bit of activity there. Unfortunately for the Sierras and southern Oregon, we're still just not looking at anything coming over the next 10 days that's going to bring relief to the wildfires. Although we'll show you tomorrow the latest smoke maps. We really have seen a huge reduction in smoke production from the fires up there due to this recent turn in weather conditions. Over the next 10 days, these are temperatures relative to normal. Add up 10 days, this is what you get. Look at all this blue across the northern Rockies. This is going to be a cooler than average area for the next week and a half, while the rest of the nation will be near to a little bit above average. You can see that dividing line. You get south of Casper, north of there, it's cooler than average. South of there, it's going to be a little bit warmer than average. Now, this is the good news I wanted to show you. This does not include the rain that fell last night, because more rain did fall last night in some areas. But this is the 14-day, the 2-week precipitation anomaly. Precipitation compared to averages for this time of year. So for the last 2 weeks, look at all the green across Montana, extreme eastern areas of Idaho, down into the Wasatch Front, southern New Mexico, southern Arizona, Colorado's western slope, and then as we get into these areas here. The most significant rain is where they really needed it. Montana, western Wyoming, Utah's Wasatch Front, up into south central areas of Montana. Boy, the rain badly needed here, and it finally came also North Dakota as well. Now, I know some of you are not happy with the rainfall over the last couple of weeks, and as you look, eastern Colorado, the Panhandle of Nebraska, and extreme southeastern Wyoming has basically been missing the precipitation. It's been more in the northern areas. But to be fair to these guys getting the rain, this area here was suffering the most in March, April, May, and June from dryness. March, April, May, June in this part of the country was much above normal precipitation-wise. Mother Nature tends to even things out. When you watch weather patterns, what you tend to see is, yes, you'll get these areas that have prolonged dryness, prolonged wetness, but then you'll see things reverse, but it never happens at the time or the pace that makes everybody happy. But this is really, really good news here. This is really what the doctor ordered for this part of the United States. And, if you go back to the 10-day precipitation map, you can see that some of those very same areas, especially Montana, will be getting more rain. If you were to look at the percentage of average, these are percents of normal for the last 2 weeks. You've got areas that are 800% of normal. So, yeah, that's really good precipitation for late August, because late August sometimes can really dry out sometimes, but that's good news. But you can see the contrast with that dry wedge in eastern Colorado, extreme southeastern Wyoming, and areas of western Nebraska. But from a big picture standpoint, for the Intermountain West, the last 2 weeks has been wonderful for a lot of areas. Not for everyone, but a large chunk of real estate, as you can see here, has seen some relief. And you can see that on the soil moisture change. The change in soil moisture over the last 10 days, look at the green here. That's just fabulous to see that. But if you were to look at overall, if you were to look at the whole picture, there's still a soil moisture deficit. And you can still see it's drier here. But boy, I tell you, right here, a hole's been chunked right into that soil moisture anomaly because of the recent rains. And you can still see we're very, very dry here still relative to the average, but they're going to be the wettest. So there's better news coming. Unfortunately, we just don't have any relief here yet. We'll talk about the Sierras in California and Oregon in some podcasts here later this week about a long-term outlook for that area. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about La Niña. We got some new data in on Friday. This is the latest modeling projections for La Niña or El Nino as we go through the rest of 2021 into early 2022. This is where we are right now. We're in what we would call a weak La Niña state. It's technically not a La Niña, but it's darn close. You need to be at minus 0.5 to be there. The general trend, if you will look at this green line, this is the average of all the models. You can see that we go back to La Niña as we get into the fall, winter season, and then as we get into April, May, and June, or March, April, and May, we get out of it. There's good news and bad news in this projection. The bad news is La Niña is coming back, and we've got to deal with it for the rest of the fall and the start of winter, which means still overall a dry signature for parts of the western United States. It also means that the beginning of winter could see extremes where we get these blocking patterns to where you can still see some pretty big outbreaks of cold, outbreaks of warmer than normal conditions. That's the bad news. We still got to deal with La Niña. But the good news is that we're going to get out of it. Historically, after a 2-year La Niña, you're going to bounce out of it. What we need to see and hope for is that maybe we get out of La Niña, maybe not in April, May, or June, but maybe in March, April, or May, more like here. And you can see some of the modeling gets it there. If we can do that, that gives us hope that the spring of 2022 will be more productive with precipitation in the western United States. So I guess you could use the phrase, it's always darkest before the light. Sometimes you got to go through the worst before things get better. But do expect La Niña to come back at least through December and January. And if you look at the statistical chances you can see that we've got a high probability through January, February, and March that we're going to be in a La Niña. Very low percentage chance of going into an El Nino until you see these numbers go up here and the La Niña numbers go down and the chance of a neutral situation really go up. So we do see in the modeling, and if we were also to use analog forecasting, meaning what has happened historically, we should get the La Niña should fade by early spring. Taking a look at sea surface temperature forecast, this is the sea surface temperature anomaly forecasted by the European model for December. A robust, well-established La Niña is in place. But look what happens by February. It starts to fade. And if that fading continues, and we see March and April, that continuation of sea surface temperatures beginning to rise, maybe we can get lucky and get into a weak El Nino spring of 2022, or at least a neutral situation. I think at least a neutral situation is highly likely, and that bodes well for 2022. Thanks for listening and watching the Day Weather Podcast. Have a good Monday.